Hey everyone, you are back again planting seeds. This is the second segment on our slavery topic. So we left off on the first segment talking about why it's important, or wanting to go deeper with you as far as explaining why it's important for us to still believe that we are from Africa, or why that motive is so important to the elites.
Right. So, I know that's pretty much like a rhetorical or dumb question. Some, people will be like, well, duh, especially if you listen to our first, part, then you'll come to the conclusion, well, duh, we know why they would want you to feel like you're still there. But I'm going to answer it anyway. So the last place that they want black people to think that they're from is here. Why? Simple. Because they made a claim to it a long time ago, and they'd be damned if we try to take any of the land back, any of that power back. Think about this: if something came up missing from you, right? If an item came up missing from you, and maybe 3 years later, and this item was important, huge, near and dear, was just important, something like land, something big, important, and whatever, 3-4 years later, you found out who did it. You wouldn't try to get it back. You wouldn't put up a fuss. You wouldn't put up an argument. You wouldn't at least try.
I think anyone would.
Now think about that, and think about the entire African American black race all trying to do that shit at the same time. The country will be in an uproar. Shit will hit the fan.
Riots everywhere.
Bruh, shit will hit the complete fan. And this is just them trying. We're not talking about them taking or overtaking. We're just talking about them simply trying. And I'm talking about asking questions, not gonna, putting questions in the motherfucker will put them in a corner, will pressure them to do something, fight or flight. They don't want to be backed into that. I'm telling you, backed into that corner. And then it's really going to showcase just how much of manipulation and a piece of shit that they are, and then people, even their own races, start to question what other shit has been manipulated. If y'all, because guess what, they're just not lying to us, they're lying to you all as well. When I say you all, I mean other races, including Europeans, that were lying to you all as well.
They manipulated your history, the American history. It was manipulated, period.
Y'all are a part, y'all ancestors are a part of that as well. So just like our ancestors are a part of one side of the coin, y'all ancestors are a part of the other side of the coin. So y'all being lied to, it was written in y'all history books as well. Y'all being brainwashed as well. So at the end of the day, just like the thought of them doing that kind of means that they're handling you like a piece of shit. They're doing the same thing to y'all at the end of the day. So I think in all actuality, anyone who hears this storyline and believe that it has any truth to it, meaning that they did manipulate it, should be pissed off. And if you're not pissed off, then that means you're pretty much kind of siding with the little evil, dumb shit that they are.
Which is ridiculous, because if you're a minority in this country who still can't reap the benefits of right housing, proper housing, or the other benefits that other Europeans or white people receive in this country, is that not going to piss you off? Does that not make you mad that you don't have the same rights as another human, as the person next to you, your neighbor next to you? You don't have the same interest rates. You don't have the same anything. That would piss you off, right?
And we all know those rights that was written at the time that they were written was not. The black people, African Americans, was the last people that those constitutions were in place to benefit.
Yeah.
Please. Come on.
They weren't even thought of. You know what I'm saying? When all that was written, we were treated like dogs. We were treated like nothing. And I say we, minorities. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous. All minorities are treated like they're beneath them.
I have a term that I want to say, and just see if you understand it.
Yeah.
The term evil genius. You understand that term?
You are smart as I don't know what, but you are super evil with your intentions. You're evil with.
That is pretty much spot on. So when you think about, if you believe that, it's not even if you believe, it's written even by their narrative in history that they came and they overtook land. So the question is, who did they overtake it from? Pretty much. So if you believe that they were smart enough to come and take over an entire country, an entire landmass, if they were smart and manipulative, evil enough to do that? I have a really good question for you that I don't know if people even thought about. Why would they go out of their way to go get Africans to bring them here to slave when they could have just did it to the people who were already here?
Why didn't they enslave, save their resources, save their money to just enslave the people here?
It wasn't no brotherly love, because even if you go way back then and take their narrative, the Indian story, think about Pocahontas, think about that movie, John Smith, Pocahontas. Seriously, think about it. There wasn't no love between them. So if it's already beefed out and we already don't like them and want to kill them off anyway, why not just slave them instead of going to Africa?
Why not enslave them and kill off the people who are gonna fight back, whether with diseases or whether just with a bullet? So,
Bruh, we're talking about, we're talking, 1700s. We're talking about 1700s, no technology like today, no resources, no GPS, no quick communication at sea, nothing like that. So taking countless trips to go get Africans, it don't sound logical at all. Especially when there are people who are here who can do the same job. Not just people who are here who can do the same job. People who originated at that landmass, which means what? That they're familiar with the climate, that they're familiar with the soil, that they're familiar with the territory. So they will be easier to slave and plant this and crop this and do this, and it will be way easier than going way to Africa and get people who are not familiar with the soil, familiar with the land, familiar with the climate, the territory, or anything like that. You're going to bring, and you don't speak their language, or do you? Because that's where you from. Or do you? Or do you speak? Because how can you do? How
seriously?
Don't speak that language, but yet go get them and teach them the soil, teach them the cropping, teach them all of that shit, and you don't even speak the same language as them.
Good question. That's a good question to me.
Bruh, like, man, the whole story that was told to us is so phony, straight bullshit. Like, get clean the fuck out of here with that. Like, come on, bro. How does my narrative storyline make less sense than theirs? How does mine not make more sense than theirs?
Yes.
Think about it. Why if you're so smart, and it is true, they are. They took an entire goddamn country, so they are. If you're that smart, then you're also smart enough to know, hey, the people are here, they know the climate, they know the soil, they can do the fucking work. Why the fuck would we use resources, navigate in the fucking dark, to take a chance of getting completely fucking lost, to go grab some people who don't speak the same language as us, don't know anything about this territory, so we're going to come and make them grow crops and do this and do that and tell them and show them how to do it, and they don't know dipshit about any of this land? And we bought that shit. To this
day, because it was written down in the history books and taught to us in school, it was apparently considered the truth, and we're asking you guys to consider the alternative, the alternative that we're discussing with you guys today, which is probably the truth.
Yeah,
it's the truth in our opinion. We wholeheartedly believe
it really is. So we mentioned in the first part, pretty much European over Africa, neighboring Africa. So we want y'all.
Being one, and the only thing separating them is that imaginary line that they drew.
Yeah. So Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1442, right? Right. So right, and according to history, slavery really didn't kick off till like the 1700s, right? So 1442, 1700.
Right.
Simple math. Let's do some subtracting. That leaves over 200 years. Over a 200-year gap, right?
Right. Over 250. It's crazy.
Now, before I get to that gap and explain how important that gap is in those years, I just want to go ahead and give a little side note on Columbo there. So everybody knows Columbus pretty much stumbled upon America, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
We
just
all know that story.
yeah, we all know. We
We've
the
heard it.
school, you know,
Yeah.
probably was in plays doing little dumb shit. Probably a little black little boy with the fucking bow tie and a fucking pilgrim hat, thinking I'm a fucking looking.
Mama's got that tape somewhere in the
dumb
house. Like,
as
It's 1442, so Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
I know.
Like, mommy,
Mommy,
I have a play at school. You're gonna come support my play for Black History Month.
the fuck. So look, my bad. So that wasn't my side note. So the side note is I just want to clear some things up real quick. Columbus actually never got past the Bahamas. We've been to the Bahamas several times, and we went to their slave museum, which is ran by Bahamians and not Europeans. So we've been to their slave museum, and you know, read stuff, looked at videos, talked to people, so we got a good feel of what we feel is the truth. And supposedly Columbus never got past Bahamas, but everybody knows, right there by America, so it's close enough. So I was just reading this shit. So
basically, Columbus never. So he was lost at sea, looking stupid as fuck.
That was one of my.
He was lost at sea.
I forgot all about that.
As fuck.
That was one of my talking points. We try to create some talking points so we're not in tangents or talking in circles or anything like that. So part of my talking points when I was, and I was pissed off in my feelings about it. And even I was thinking about it, I'm like, okay, if we already know he stumbled and discovered America. So he was pretty much lost at sea looking stupid and somewhere, obviously none of them knew how to navigate, around in the open sea. But I got something to tell y'all. Somehow they were very, 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 very comfortable with getting to and from Africa.
It was very clear
to and from Africa.
Yep.
Not only just in their narrative to bring over the slaves, because let's think about it, they had to populate themselves here as well, right? So if they're going back and forth to Africa that easily, then doesn't that mean that Africa had to at some time been considered? It just makes sense that it had to be.
With Africa.
It just had to have been considered Europe. Come on, it had to be considered Europe.
It was considered all one again until that imaginary line was crossed. So we know it was considered.
And the crazy thing is, this should make sense to y'all. Maybe in 70 years they'll have another drawing of them, because I guarantee you within 70 years there's going to be some other countries that's overtaken. There's going to be some other shit that goes down in history between now and 70 years from now. So I guarantee you the world map, the US map, whatever map, is going to be redrawn again and again, and different countries are going to be renamed. And
I'm sure it's a matter of time.
Now that was my little side note, a little long side note. So I want to get back to the gap, the
250-year gap.
Right.
When Columbus first landed on the Bahamas, not American soil, but Bahama soil, and to when slavery started in 1700.
Right. So I want y'all to really think about this. This is why the gap is so important. So it took them over 200 years, right? Took them over 200 years to essentially enforce slavery. Some may think, why it took them that long, because they was making all of these trips back and forth to get Africans. This is my narrative of it. It took them that long for a couple of reasons. One of it was because obviously they were going back and forth to get Europeans,
right,
aka Africans, because it's all the same. So it's all the same, but we're talking about the pale ones though. So right now we're talking about
they were soliciting people overseas and begging them to come back to the Americas just to create civilization, the economy, and they were forcing people to take land. They were giving away land and slaves.
They were enticing other Europeans in Europe to come to this new land. You're going to have land, you're going to have slaves, you're going to have this, you're going to have that. But before slavery even came into play, this is what they were doing. they were populating the land with their people.
Right.
Not the dark-skinned Africans, the pale Africans.
European Africans.
Yes, them. They were populating America with their people. And on the other end of the spectrum, what they were doing essentially was
taking control over the territory pretty much, and also trying to implement their beliefs or religious beliefs, implementing their society structure, I guess, the way that they had things set up in Europe. They wanted the same thing to be set up in the Americas.
Right. And I'm going to touch on the religious beliefs. I got that kind of out of place. I'm going to touch on that next. No, that's on me. This is supposed to be the point that I should be on. All right, perfect. So one was them populating their people out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other was them, I guess, depopulating the Indians, the original, the Aboriginals or whatnot. So according to history, that's even pretty much written in our school books that we've learned, about 90%. This is going to be the reason for when you ask, okay, if y'all took the land from the Indians, why aren't there a lot of Indians left around? This is the reason. This is going to be the reason. While 90% of the Indian population in North America, U.S., were killed off due to smallpox and other diseases that they could not fight off because their immune system wasn't equipped to handle it. Why was their immune system not equipped to handle it? Because think about this. I want you to think about this. If 90% of their population is dying off like that, now we're talking about we're talking about 1400s, so they've been in civilization and they haven't been dying off like that. So all of a sudden 90% of the population is dying off due to smallpox and other diseases, meaning that smallpox and other diseases wasn't there at one time, because otherwise the immune system would be equipped to handle it. So obviously, how did the diseases get here?
They brought them over.
They brought the diseases over as a way, because I'm going to tell you this. You can't bring over a whole country at one time to eliminate 90% of the population by fisticuffs or by weaponry. You can't do that at one time. Keep in mind, they got to make trips back and forth with ships. So how else can you do it? You bring diseases that your ass is pretty much immune to, because these are diseases that stem from your country and your climate that you can handle, and you bring that shit to a whole nother region that does not have those diseases, and now that is a much easier way to wipe off 90% of that population. And guess what's left? Guess what's left? 10% of the population. So guess what's easier to do now? Guess what's so much easier to do now? Guess is what's so much easier to do now? Enslave them. Now it's easier to overpower them. Now it's easier to take their territory. And now is when the whole slavery plot comes into form. We already populated over there. We already took control of a lot of land. We already killed a lot of them by way of disease and by way of fighting, killing, whatever. We're in control now. So
so they decimated the Indian population and they grew the European population. So at that point, they had full control of the land.
Full control over the land. So now you want to know why? You want to know why they really didn't kill 100% of the population?
Because they wanted some to enslave.
Who's going to do the work?
Yeah.
Who's going to do the work? So when you say, well, why didn't they just kill all of them? Who's going to do the work? Who's going to do the work? So guess what? Now what they're going to do is that 10%, they're going to force them. They're going to enslave them because guess what? They're the ones that's familiar with the climate, familiar with the, familiar with all of that. They're going to enslave them pretty much to build up the economy, to build up the U.S., to whatever. And in the process of enslaving them, part of the Queen of England, Elizabeth, whoever she was at that time, part of her way of controlling the now slaves were to introduce them to religion.
Yeah.
To introduce them to a religion as a way of conforming to the slave masters. And this religion happen to be the paganistic religion. This happened to be Christian
That's
religion.
where the Bible was
That's where the Bible was introduced, and as a way to subdue, conform, whatever, that they used that religion. That's how it was introduced to our people. Think about that. That's how it was introduced to our people from another country, sending it over with their people and infusing it in us.
A perfect visionary depiction of that is Birth of a Nation, where he was preaching to all of the slaves, and I mean it's true. Like, watch that movie.
That's a really great depiction.
That's a
of it.
really great.
That's a really great depiction of it, because he was forced
Yeah.
to go read. He was taught the Bible as a kid. This is supposedly the story on Nat Turner, which I would take with a grain of salt. It's probably partially true, but probably manipulated as well. But however, as this, and within the movie, it depicts Nat Turner somehow getting privileged as a kid to kind of be up in the big house, because there was a little white boy around his age,
Yeah.
and they kind of grew up together. So the mom took over Nat Turner and brought her in, took him away from his mom,
Yeah.
and was teaching him how to read, teaching him the Bible, and how to. That was the only thing that she would teach him was the Bible.
Was the Bible?
Was
He
the
couldn't
Bible.
read
He
any
couldn't
of the
read
other
anything
books. It
else.
was just the
It
Bible.
was just the Bible.
They started him early, teach him the Bible. That way he can start reciting it to the other blacks,
Right.
black people.
So he
who
was
can't
just
read.
he just became like a preacher for his little
Master.
his little, but then also his little over the little black people. But then they saw how powerful that was.
Yeah.
They saw how powerful that was. So what they started making him do, they forced him to go from plantation to plantation to plantation to try to read to the slaves who were rebelling, to the slaves who were not listening, to the slaves who were going against what the slave masters wanted them to do.
Yep.
So he was reading words saying that, submit to your master. This is written in the Bible, and after you die, you go to heaven. If you want to go to heaven, you follow the Bible.
Period. And that was enabled them to conform, enable the masters to have more control over them, and it's
Guess what's still around? Guess what's still pumping and kicking? And this is we're not getting, we're gonna have a whole nother conversation or episode about religion in general. But I'm just saying, as I stated in the first segment, this message is really and all actually directed to the same copper colored tones as I am or whatever. So at the end of the day, anyone who else watch, if hopefully you got something positive to say about it, because you should understand where any animosity from me comes from. But at the end of the day, this message is directed towards my black folks, my African Americans, whatever.
Yeah, and you can't really not touch on religion when it comes to slavery, because religion did play such a huge role.
It played one of the biggest roles in making slaves conform, and making slaves submit, and making them peacefully slave, and making them peacefully slave.
Make them accept it, and just allow yourself to submit, and just know that God is going to come one day, and God's going to make it okay. Just keeping that in mind made them docile or more willing, I guess, in a sense.
Right. So now, at this time, everybody knows the population probably shifted dramatically, and whether the population shifted or not, we clearly knew who was in control, because we clearly knew who was slaves, and we clearly knew who was
standing around ordering, and who was picking up a shovel and picking up something to do with the work.
Right. So now that they have control of the Indians, aka black folks, African Americans, Aboriginals, now what they're going to do is they're going to mix some similar complected Africans to further confuse and manipulate history into believing that our people with darker complexion somehow came from the same continent, aka Africa. Now think about this. What is above Africa?
I'll answer that for you. It's Europe.
Which means, and then back to our first one. South Africans resemble who? Majority of South Africans resemble who?
Europeans.
Exactly. So that means that they were already familiar with Africans. They already knew, you know, that was like ding, 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 ding. I have an evil idea. What we should do is, you know, them dark people that live up the street from us that we're kind of cool.
Back home in Africa.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and enslave some of them.
Let's go ahead and take some of them, but we may tell them that they're going to be part of the Europeans and get land, and somebody else is going to do the work. We may tell them that to get them on this damn ship. And you know what? I worked with someone who literally is a descendant from Africa because she moved from Africa. So, and she told me, she broke it down to me. She told me that some Africans actually sold their family members to slave masters, and money. But listen, listen to this. Listen to this. I guarantee you that conversation was more or less this: hey, I'm going to give your family in Africa a bunch of money, and you come to America and either work it off, or they may even manipulated them to think that they were going to get a piece of the Batu. I'm talking about the dark Europeans, aka African, or whatever you want to, call them.
The dark Europeans.
Right. So I'm more than sure there was some manipulation to probably get some was probably forceful, and some probably was manipulation to get them on them ships. But I guarantee you it was simply the only reason why they were chosen. The only reason why Africans was chosen, the darker skinned Africans were chosen, the multi-complected, not just the pale ones. The only reason why they were chosen was because they happened to resemble the same hue as the people already in America. So how do you confuse history and manipulate the people? Because eventually generations are going to die off, and if you're already in control of everything, then you're controlling that too. So, you're controlling traditions that would have naturally been passed down had y'all as not came, pretty much. So, damn, I lost my train of thought. I'm about to get back on it, don't you worry. Yeah. So I'm more than sure, it was some manipulations on getting some Africans to come over, but it was just a plot to mix, mix hues together,
cause more confusion, and make it to where people may not question it as much. We say for Africa, we look like him, or have a similar resemblance. So we're all going to be mixed up in a second here, anyways.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the only reason that Africans ended up here was because of the resemblance and complexion. If we happen to have green complexion, Africans wouldn't have been brought here. They would have went and got someone with green complexion. The only reason Africans was brought here was so they can mix and blend, so their storyline will make sense to us 100 years later.
Right. And you guys already know that there were Native Americans or the Indians who were here. So you know that there were natives here, the Aborigines. So you already know that's factual. What we're saying is that they were not strictly Native Americans or strictly one race. They were a combination of a couple of different races, and that reflects in them saying copper-colored races. That reflects in their own definition.
And their own, the 1828 definition. Year 1828. So I have a side note. Since kind of because some people may be like, okay, you're confusing me because it sounds like you're saying that black people are the originals and, are quote unquote Indians, but now you're saying that, hey, maybe they did bring some Africans over. Yes, both are true, in my opinion, true facts, true statements. Now, you may have been one of them, so I'm not saying that, you may not have any African descent in you or whatnot. You may, because some people were brought down. You may be one of them people in the world who went through with that Ancestry.com and to find out what percent African you were, because they're not going to say you're a percent Indian. They're going to do that. That's not going to come up in a result. That's not going to come up in a result. That's not going to, that's not going to come up. It's going to be African American is going to probably come up for all black people, like for real. So, look, I'm gonna put it to you like this: if you ended up wasting your money on that, yeah, it's pretty much wasting your money on that garbage.
It's also just really, it's embarrassing. It's another way to just embarrass. I mean, really, black folks.
Yeah. You were duped, and you should feel embarrassed. How? Let me go ahead and break it down to you. So, the average race outside of the African American race can more than likely trace their ancestors back several generations, way more generations than the average black person can or African American can, right?
Right.
Meaning a Chinese person or a Jewish person or a white person could trace their ancestors back way more generations naturally than a black person can. And the way that they probably can do it is simply just by going to ask mom or grandma, looking at some history shit that's been passed down from their people to their people. Easy peasy,
Yeah,
right?
because it wasn't manipulated. It's just, it is what it is. That's what happened. They don't have to ask any questions about it.
It's right. So when you think about Ancestry.com, and then you consider that fact and that notion, then you that light bulb should go off like, damn, this thing it sounds like they're targeting an audience who don't know where they come from, who's confused about where they come from, who wants to know where they come from. So what is the only audience in the only race in the US for real who are so confused about where the hell they come from and don't know is the Black/African American race.
Yeah.
So the Ancestry.com bullshit was targeted to y'all, one, to pull more money out of y'all pockets, but to further push the envelope that we're all from African American, that we're descendants from, and that we're all descendants from Africa. You probably got the test results back and the percentage results back, and was like, whatever percentage Africa, this is the territory of what they say my ancestors are from. I feel so proud. You probably shedded some tears. You probably went out and bought some stuff. Like seriously, it probably was like a very powerful moment. And I'm just being honest with you, not saying every single person, because some people did derive, so that that may be true. But Ancestry.com ain't the way to go. Ancestry.com will leave probably every black person roots back in Africa. It's a waste of time.
Waste of money.
It's a waste of money.
And it plays with your emotions.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Come on. It's just another way to push black people being from Africa. Like seriously, wake the fuck up. It's just another way to push black people being from Africa. Because at the end of the day, you want to know who probably heads Ancestry.com or whatever it is. It's probably just being honest. It's probably a white person.
If it's not, y'all can let us know.
If it's not, let us know. But it's probably a white person, which means that they're going to go with the same narrative of history. Like come on. Huh?
I was gonna say, I'm gonna look it up.
You can go ahead and look it up, House. Maybe, yeah, if you find it, you find it. And while we doing that, we'll go ahead and go ahead and look that up. We'll go ahead and continue. So, if anyone just wants to know the blatant answer to the question, are African Americans Aboriginals? All, possibly not. The mass majority, I would say absolutely. I really think that the mass majority of black people, African Americans in the U.S. are descendants from Indians, are descendants from the Aboriginals of this land, not of Africa, of this land. Unfortunately, there's been some blending of African descendants, into some people. So, there is some.
It is a blend that we can't deny. So we're not saying that that's just absolute. No, that's a conspiracy in itself. Like, we're not saying that. We're just saying that this is an alternative and this is something that we believe in. Absolutely.
So if you think about it, if you think about this, I'm sure I know you've heard this several times. Maybe not like directed towards you, but just in general. The term, go back to Africa. Go back to Africa. Go back to your country. Go back to Africa. Go back. Do y'all think I want y'all to think about this. Do y'all think that maybe they have created that term intentionally? And that intentional term, go back to Africa, just to further brainwash us to make us think that's where we came from in the first place? where maybe that's where they are from. Like,
yeah, to try to put another hierarchy, another level of like.
that's like that
what I'm
person who constantly probably accused somebody of cheating with the other ones who cheated. So the one who's telling you to go
Yeah,
back to
that's a
Africa,
good
that's where
analogy.
you from.
Next time someone say go back to Africa,
They ain't gonna say go back to Chinese because they know we don't resemble anything.
Right.
They ain't gonna say go back to Japan because they know we don't resemble anything of Japanese people. They ain't gonna say any of that. They only found the light complected people. The when I say light, I mean similar complected people,
right?
And chose them for no reason other than that. Period.
Yeah. That and make them go back to Africa. Like this is our country to make them feel superior to you. Just another another tool that they use.
But how? Like it doesn't make sense. How can you tell me go back to Africa and in the same breath know in your head, even what you were taught, that your descendants didn't come from isn't from the U.S. That your descendants isn't from the U.S. But look, going back to the definition of our last episode, going back to that, the definition of
Aboriginal.
no, American.
American.
The
there we
go.
American.
Yep, the definition of American. I'm just going to touch on the last part of it. I'm going to go ahead and read the whole thing. So, the noun, American, a native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans. But now this was 1828 dictionary. But now, meaning moving forward, but now apply to the Europeans born in America.
To Europeans, so only to a specific race of people born in America does that apply as an American?
Yeah.
Oh,
well, American, meaning now the originals of the Aboriginals of America, like
wow.
blatantly, and
they took it. That's blatantly saying we're here now. We're going to take that.
That's a dictionary that y'all wrote, that y'all published, 1828 Webster. If anybody can get their hands on it, if y'all think I'm like, hey, I'm not talking about no computerized, whatever. 1828 Webster Dictionary. Look it up. Find it, look it up, and look up all those definitions, because the further you go back in history, the closer you're going to get to the truth. Those definitions dramatically change to the modern day definitions, because they don't say nothing like that anymore. Nothing like that. Even that whole copper color, you ain't gonna see that nowhere.
Oh, I've heard that. I'm like, what you mean copper color? But that was the best way for them to explain it. Like they said, copper color.
Yeah.
Races,
What other ways for them to explain different shades of a race that they're not familiar with? Because at that point, all they see is the dark Africans and the pale Africans. So now they see the different shades. So they say the copper color because they know copper come in different colors. And they even say races is plural because they know it was different shades of it. Please. So look, like honestly, the next time that you're in Walmart or on the subway or somewhere in the U.S. and a European tells you to go back to Africa, you say, no, I'm from here. You take your ass back to Africa where you and your people from. That's where they're from.
Yeah, that's where they're from, period. At the end of the day, that's where they're from, and you need to let it be known.
That's where they're from. They're one and the same. Africa, Europe, imaginary line. Take away that imaginary line.
That history put there. Take that away. They're all in one, and we're just trying to plant that seed. Let you guys know what we research, what we know is the truth, and hopefully it grows with you guys.
Yeah, hopefully, like seriously, hopefully some people out there are like, damn, he just opened my eyes, they just opened my eyes. Hopefully it's a group of individuals who what we just said made absolute perfect sense to. Made absolute perfect sense to.
And if y'all have any questions about anything that we said, any resources or references that we use, let us know. Comment us, write us.
Yeah.
We'll be happy to share.
Yeah. So before we thank y'all for watching, we do want to let y'all know one of our next episodes is going to be in relation to this, and then that's probably going to be our last topic on slavery. But the next one is going to be in relation to this, and it's going to deal with reparations and the quiet fact that black people just may have already gotten their reparations. So that's probably going to be our next episode.
Yep. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you are interested in hearing about those reparations and what we have to say about it, make sure to check in with us next time.
Yep. Thank you for watching. Deuces.